people become attached to the loudest thing you've done last. And with Girl Boss, like, that's what people thought of me as for so much longer than I was that.
Yeah.
You know, Girl Boss became this like proxy word for something that like I didn't really intend to do. It entered the zeitgeist and, you know, people, it just mutates outside of what your original intent is.
You know, they say women shouldn't be bossy.
We're out here reclaiming that word. What's so wrong with being the boss?
Bossy.
Welcome back to Bossy. Now, as you know, the show is about leaning into your inner boss and doing that in a well-rounded way. And so I'm really excited because today we're going to double click on a particular part of that and talk about having different eras of your life evolving into the next version of yourself. So if you are going through some change in your life right now, if you are stepping into or trying to step into the next version of yourself, you're going to love this conversation. Now, to have this chat, I brought in the OG girl boss herself, and Sophia Amoruso is going to be joining us to have this conversation. Now, if you're not familiar with her business and what she's done in her career, she started a company called Nasty Gal, which is an online retail clothing brand, cool, bold clothing. She started it as an eBay store and grew it to $100 million a year in revenue business. After that, she started a company called Girl Boss, which is a media company, and wrote a book on being a girl boss, which inspired so many women to lean into their inner boss and step into the next versions of their career and their life. Now she's running a VC fund and investing in startups, but she's had so many different versions of her life and her career. She's a rock star, and I'm really excited for you to hear this conversation and how she thinks about different eras growing and evolving. Hi, Sophia. Okay, so I want to start with something in particular talking to you, because one of the things that I love about you is that you are really good at reinventing yourself, or at least that's how it seems like when I see you online. Like, first of all, there's the looks. There's a lot of different looks of Sophia. There's like the mid-length blonde, which we have now. We've got like nasty gal version of Sophia. We've got like girl boss era Sophia. There's all kinds of eras of you. And I'm curious if you view yourself as someone who also just regularly reinvents themselves.
I used to force it on myself, and now I feel like it's forced on me. You know, it's like sometimes you reinvent yourself because life is making you do it, and then other times life is like inspiring you to do it. I think my hair used to be some kind of like psycho way of thinking that I was changing something in my life when I was actually just changing my hair. And it's cool that I've like learned the difference, but it was also like a very public kind of weird thing. People are like, we've met before. I totally don't recognize you. You have blonde hair and you don't have choppy black bangs cutting off half your face that look like you can't afford a hairdresser.
No, that's not what it looked like. It was a look. I liked it. So if we go back in time, like let's back up a little bit. Talk to me about what some of your like most standout eras and versions of yourself have been. And who were you in that era? Like give me the like that's the look, but kind of match it to like who you were inside.
I moved to Olympia, Washington when I was 17, and then I lived there. And in Seattle, generally it was like a year and some change in the Pacific Northwest that at like, 18 years old feels like 5 years. It was a really like formative time in my life. I was very depressed, very, very unhappy, very dark person, very like cynical for not having had any life experience, which is just kind of funny to think about. Like, how can you be a cynic when you haven't even seen anything yet, or be jaded? Maybe I thought I knew something about life, but I mean, that's all you have to grasp to when you're 18 is like, you've no idea how little you know. I listened to a lot of goth music and I wore a lot of black clothing. I think the next era was San Francisco, the years preceding and around starting Nasty Gal, which was a lot of like vintage clothing, rock and roll, long hair, dive bars, rock and roll t-shirts, generally Black Sabbath as like painting a picture. So that was, beginning Nasty Gal. And then there
I
was
like how you're giving a
Nasty Gal
soundtrack for each era too. Like there's a music vibe.
Oh, yeah.
To like put it together.
Music's important to me. Yeah. So then the next phase, I guess, would have been like peak Nasty Gal, where I have the blunt bob and the choppy bangs, but like edgy, like commercial edgy, not like, oh,
Mm,
you're kind of scary. Like I had been scary edgy before. I
yeah.
think this was like cool, cut through the noise. Like I'm an entrepreneur, but I used to be kind of those other people. And
Yeah.
but like
I'm
I'm really, it
different.
was just I'm different, but like in a way that the conventional world who has an idea of success can look at and be like, wow, she's unusual for this conventional thing that is like achievement and, you
Yeah.
know, business or whatever.
I feel like so much of entrepreneurship though, like a lot of entrepreneurs get into it and they want to do the like opposite. Like I'm going to fuck things up and like do it my way, and like so much of business gets created in that energy. So that makes a lot of sense that like that's where you were and how Nasty Gal started kind of in you in that vibe.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's like it was an accident to start a business, but all I wanted to do was learn how people who had been taught how to do it in school did it. And I'm not sure. I still am not sure I know those things.
Fast forward to the era that you're in now. Like talk to me about where you are
Yes.
now and how you would describe that era.
So now I'm in Los Angeles. I am a venture capitalist. I have an online course called Business Class where I teach entrepreneurs. So I fund entrepreneurs and I help them one on one. When I invest in them, I still kind of broadcast what I know through Business Class, which is my online course. And then I like kind of have a personal life, I guess. Turned 40 a month ago.
You turned
And
40 a month ago. Happy birthday. Are you in like a grown and sexy era? Is that how it's feeling? What does it feel like?
I could have like tried harder, but generally, yes. I
No.
don't feel like hot right now.
I like that you're sharing how you feel though, because you're not like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, I feel hot and great all the time. And like, that's not real life. We don't always feel that way.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. I'm technically single, but I'm kind of seeing someone right now. But it's
Okay.
like almost like the grosser you are, the more they're like cool. Like they're like, oh, that's hot. You're hot. Like don't try. So I'm also just like, cool, whatever. I'll just let it rip. Like I'm not gonna blow dry my hair.
Men are like
Like I
the
just
don't
don't want to. If
try.
yeah, the don't try is like on trend, but not like
Yeah.
don't like try not to try. Actually, just roll out of bed with like a
Just
cowlick,
chill.
not try, and like have dry skin you didn't notice until like halfway through the day and be like, what's
Men
that?
don't notice any of those things.
They
So
don't
like, why are
fucking
we
care.
optimizing for, I have
They
no
don't
idea.
care. They don't care.
You were sort of talking about the business stuff that you're doing right now. And then you were like, and I have a personal life, kind of. But then you started filling in more color. And it sounds like, I'm like, oh, she has a personal life going. That's good. Because as entrepreneurs, it's so easy to not have a personal life at all and have just like focused all the time.
Yeah. And I thought having a personal life was like, I have a house and, I was married for a little while at one point and I have this and I have these things that look like that are a place that I go. That's my place. And that's so special. But it's like what you do in that place and in other places or how you're enriching your life with that place, not just being like, okay, I have a personal life. I like my house. Like there's a shallow way to do it. And then there's a way to do it that maybe it's just come with, um, like maturity, but also having the time to even grow into a personal life because yeah, I didn't have time for it. So it's something that like I feel like I kind of like bolted on for a long time. And it's something that now I'm actually kind of like living in more. And when people ask how I am, I'm like talking about my personal life, which is, and it's not like, yay, you got engaged and like all the milestones that are easy things to talk about. It's like, oh, cool. No, I'm going to spend more time in Europe. It's not like I'm starting another thing or I invested in this company and that's amazing. Like we find like what we're learning and valuing and, you know, we hear ourselves and what we're inspired by at any point in our life by, how we answer the question, like, how are you and what's new? And, I was telling somebody I hosted dinner last night and I was like, yeah, and I play poker. And there was this LA Times feature like a month ago that I was in as part of this like art poker scene. I'm not even really an art collector, but I play poker with these artists. There's an LA World Series of Art Poker tournament that I played in. I placed 25th out of like 130 people. Leonardo DiCaprio and Toby Maguire like didn't make it that far. And it's like hosted by a big artist and my friend Eric. And it's an interesting just kind of intersection of like artists, gallerists, collectors. And Benny Blanco sat next to me. I did not know, like I had heard his name. I would not have recognized him. This is how I'm just like out of the algorithm. But there was this like LA Times piece, like in the Sunday, like lifestyle section, like in print, and my photo among photos of some artists and stuff was in there just about playing poker. And I'm like, I cannot remember the last time. Maybe it was since TMZ covered my divorce that like there was something about some shit that's not work in the press. Not that the press is again in the indication, but like the echoes of what bounces back to you are an indication of what other people are seeing. They're like, oh, that's interesting.
And so you're
Oh,
saying the
that
press
is.
this time was like, here's Sophia enjoying her life, having fun.
Yeah, here's Sophia with an elective fucking hobby. What? Like something that doesn't have, I'm not in it to like make a ton of money. I'm in it because I enjoy it and I like the community around it. It's like, that's interesting and probably totally unrelatable, but it's just like what people feed back to you, or like they're like, oh, you're doing this, or they see this on your Instagram, like, yeah, I am having fun. Oh yeah, I am. I did go to Europe and I don't know what's next, but that's actually thrilling for the first time, like in a long time, I guess.
What would you call it? What do we call the era?
Perennial hot girl like season.
Okay.
I don't know. It's not hot girl summer. It's just like hot girl horizon.
Hot girl horizon. Wait, why horizon? Like it's
I don't
coming?
know,
It's
because
on
it's
the
still
horizon?
like, yeah, it's like a horizon or a summit, but it's like I still can't see the top, but I don't really want to. It's just like a
Oh.
cool. I'm just on like a cool trip.
You know what I'm hearing in what you're saying? Because I think what's really relatable about what you're saying is that there's so many things that we often get these dopamine hits for, right? Like these, like, here's the new project I launched. Here's the big splash that I want to make. And we're always on our phones scrolling, seeing other people doing these big things. And so we start to feel like, oh, I'm not doing all the big things. Like, and so we've got to then go engineer more big things to announce and to do. And it's so easy when you're a big achiever, you're a smart person to do those things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm hearing this distinction for you. And this is actually what I meant when I was saying grown and sexy at 40, which is not like
Okay.
flashy grown and sexy, but like wisdom grown and sexy. And I'm
Yeah.
hearing the like wisdom that is, it doesn't have to be all of this stuff. It doesn't have to be that I'm launching a brand new project and all of these huge dopamine hits. It's like I went to Europe and had a nice time and I'm hanging out with a guy that I kind of like, and like I'm not over pressed about it, but like it's nice. And I played
Mm-hmm.
poker and it was nice to be acknowledged for something that I did that wasn't like big splashy thing. It was just like me enjoying my life. That to me
Yeah.
is the kind of hot girl summer I think we all want. It's like
Yeah.
a confident, chill, not pressed
Yeah.
hot girl summer.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like quickly came out of the whole thing where I need to like impress and make a big splash and announce things, and that'll happen. Like I'm gonna keep doing big things. Trust fund is like amazing. They're great companies I'm investing in. I'll go raise fund too. I'm still gonna be speaking at stuff, but it's like I'm increasingly selective and strategic about what I spend my time on and who I spend my time with and what I want to broadcast, and I don't do it gratuitously.
Yeah. I just left a 3-day kind of girls trip mastermind with some other entrepreneurs who are all really successful. And the biggest topic of the conversation was like, how do we hold each other accountable for actually doing the rest that we said we were going to do? Like, instead of just like the opportunity comes across your desk and it's like, oh, we'd like to book you for this or have you come do this, to actually say no, to
Yep.
actually just like whatever
Yeah.
the slogan you said, like I could just stay home. I'm going to put that on
Yeah.
my phone. Like I could have just stayed home.
I
Right.
could have
And
just stayed
knowing
home.
the difference.
Yeah, yeah. That difference is hard. And again, like early on in your career, it's like you have to say yes to know what to say no to. Um, and again, that takes time. And then you learn how to qualify things and who's worth your time and what's not. But if you're not getting invites, like you kind of have to figure out a way to show up. Some people are in a stage where they're not getting invited and they're like, how can I go to those things? Because I know they'd advance my career. Um, Even then, like staying home is like a good idea. A
Are you an
luxury.
introvert?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
It's a luxury to have done so much at a relatively young age. And I mean, not even now, but had done it at a younger age to, go on the trips and see the glamorous stuff and go to the things and know the difference. Like, if you can know the difference between what's worth your time and what's not, what's worth blowing money on.
My friend Rachel, who was telling me this, my friend Rachel Rogers, she was like, I'm spending a lot of energy running around at these conferences and not necessarily getting as much out of it. And I could be at home doing consistency. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious if there's like an example you think of like a one thing that feels like it's, yeah, that's good use of my time in this season of my life, and one that's like not really good use of my time right now.
Yeah. For me personally,
Yeah, for you personally.
yeah. Worth my time, conferences that pay me and to speak, conferences that have super duper high value people that are relevant to what I'm doing. And then what's not worth my time are things that I just don't know are going to bring value. And at this point, I kind of know who's going to be at something. I want to know who is in the audience. I want to, it's like things that are paying me or like can later on by being in the right room. Things that, and focusing on my work. Like you said, you're an introvert, I'm an introvert. Some people are just prolific and they just, whoever it is, Rachel Rogers, they can just go. Seems like it, at least from a distance. That's not me.
She can definitely go. She's got all the extrovert energy.
Just go. Yeah. I wish I was like that.
I'm not that girl.
Yeah. It's emotionally, it's like a thing to prepare for and then be like, recover from to a certain extent.
We've kind of talked a lot about the different versions of you and how you've reinvented yourself over the years, which I love about you. And I'm already hearing you in the future. By the way, you're already talking about like, okay, but some of the next things that I want to do, and here's how I see myself on social media, or here's some of the things I see myself in next. So tell me a little bit about where you think the next version of you is going. Like maybe you're not there yet. You sort of said it's kind of coming. We're on the summit. What's kind of the next Sophia?
I think the next version of me is like collaborating with opportunity, collaborating with the people who come into my life. And, there's, people come in, there's like seasons. What is it? There's like different seasons, and it's like figuring out like who can fit into my life on the grander scale from 40 to whatever that becomes, without trying to force a plan into it or project some, hope and dream onto, whoever or whatever it is that comes into my life. I'm a serial monogamist, so like that's a part of my life. Like I've never really dated, and I don't know if I'm like codependent or just a catch.
Hey, wait, pause for a second. I need to appreciate that for a minute. I don't know if I'm just codependent or a catch. Love it. Okay.
And then exploring the world. Like I've bought my house in 2012. I've been here. It's like I was like, I'm gonna die in this house. I'm not selling it. But I am spending time in other places, in apartments, like wherever I feel like being. And I'm actually renting my house out long term. So I'm just going to be like forced to do different things.
Yeah.
Like forced into different places, not homeless. But in a very like, conservative, small way, and small, like under 1,000 square feet in cities outside of New York, which is relatively small. But it's like, my life is bloated, and honestly, it's just like de-bloat, have new experiences, and feel and like take a breath, but also continue like building things without feeling like I'm being buried in my own like commitments, like buried.
I love the idea of sort of not only reinventing yourself, but even inside of that, there's expansion seasons and contraction seasons. And we need those seasons to contract a little bit and like get rid of the extra stuff that you don't really need. And it sounds like you're coming into that. kind of
Yeah, you
vibe.
need room. You need room to expand and space to let expansion happen, even in your personal life. So you have the energy and the clarity to go expand
Yeah.
in the more public sphere.
It also sounds like one of the things you're doing a lot in this coming up season is really like leaning into community. There's people that you're supporting and helping. There's people that you want in your life and partnerships. That's kind of a thread. Talk to me more about that.
The level of my ambition is capped at the number of stakeholders that I like report to, whether or not like I'm paying them. Because I've done that. I've had hundreds of employees,
Yeah.
and I don't enjoy it, and I'm not good at
And
it.
now
And
you're like small team.
I like being in the weeds. And when you have a larger team, people resent when you're in the weeds. They're like, I'm supposed to be creative. And I'm like, but I want to be. Like, they're like, delegate to me. And I'm like, but
It's my company. I get to be creative too.
it's like the inventory that I had to give when I was building Nasty Gal was something totally different. It was my curation. It was like my taste. It was, giving people something that, when they put that on, they felt like they could take on the world. They were really confident. And that's kind of been a theme throughout my career, but very specifically, I'm doing that with entrepreneurs. And so, and it's kind of this stack of offerings that's like, I invest in them, and I get to and I'm investing in early stage startups. So I get to look at their decks. I get to look at their marketing plans. I'm not consulting. It's part of what I do as an investor. But it's something that makes a really big impact. And I get to be kind of in the weeds with these early stage companies without being responsible for the outcome, right? Like, I can't build their companies for them. Actually, I'm investing in them because they're better qualified than I am to build those companies. But the runoff of my experience is this completely effortless ability to open my mouth and help founders do things that I did do, that I didn't do, that I've, failed at doing, that I've watched, and what that incredible executives I've had the luxury of like working for me do successfully, and be able to even give advice based on what I've witnessed great leaders do.
So, like, let me ask you an example of this, because I think this is really good. And I think understanding how you're helping founders a little bit more tactically will help people understand this like new era of what you're doing and working on. So, let me can you give me an example of something you've recently helped a founder think through based on something you did or didn't do, or I wish I had done it differently?
I mean, the hardest thing you can do is change your mind when you've told other people you're going to do something. So I'm going to go build this specific product, and this is what you invested in. But having the confidence to be like, I don't think that's going to work. And there's a company I invested in, who went through that, and they've informed me and their other investors, like, hey, this is the changes that we're making based on what we've heard. And it's not necessarily what we said we're going to do, but it is scary to justify to the people who, whether it's your public audience, like, I'm going to go do this thing, you can shut things down. You can shut them down quickly. It's not embarrassing. I did a mastermind, and like, people kind of wanted it, but actually they'd rather work one-on-one, or they'd rather work in a larger group setting. I did that once, kind of spun it down. And that's something that like takes a lot of confidence, and working with one of my founders on that, and telling her that like, that's totally fine, and that's okay, and that's actually the right direction. And if she's inspired to do that, she's going to inspire everybody with what it is that she's doing. And we'll all follow her, is great leadership. And that's what great founders do. But it's scary optically for people to see you not be the thing that they became attached to when they, when you entered their life.
Do you feel like people are attached to previous versions of you, and that's why you know about what this experience is like? Like, I think I saw you on social media posts that like I kind of ushered in this girl boss era and this whole movement, but like, now that's over. I'm moving on.
Yeah, I feel, I wrote Girl Boss in 2013. It was published in 2014. 14. I was in my 20s. It's like, yay, rah, 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 rah. My company I had never experienced layoffs. Like it was just all up and to the right. And there were really hard times. Like the warehouse melted down and customers were upset and, a whole host of other things that were really challenging. But experiencing adversity at scale and in the court of public opinion was super duper extremely hard. And like, yeah, people become attached to the loudest thing you've done last. And with Girl Boss, like, that's what people thought of me as for so much longer than I was that. And publishing a book with the word girl in it, that was just like my stupid story. It was before, this most recent women's movement, where things became very serious. And I never knew I would have the responsibility to like somehow speak on behalf of women. But, at a certain point, things became a lot more nuanced. People are exploring what, girl boss became this like proxy word for something that like I didn't really intend to do. It entered the zeitgeist and, it just mutates outside of what your original intent is. People shoved my microphone in my face and they were like, talk about the wage gap. And I was like, I've literally never worked for, I'm sure maybe in the shoe store I worked at, a guy got paid more. I don't know. But in the context of like, I've just lived outside of some of these things that I've been asked to like speak on behalf of and represent. And I'm just actually not qualified. And so there's been like responsibility put on me that I didn't necessarily ask for, literally because I wrote a pink book with the word girl in it. And the world has changed so much. That book has changed more people's lives than anybody, that literally the host of people who have ever politicized the word girl boss and like shit on it, like all the people who have read that shit the number of them pale in comparison to the effects that book had on people, and then the network effects of the women who quit their jobs and started companies and inspired others to do that. And like nobody knows that because that's in my inbox, that's in my DMs. Like the stories of those transformations aren't in the press. And the satisfaction's weird. It sounds almost egotistical. But it's like, I know how meaningful what I've done is, and sure, that word's part of it, but like, regardless of someone, examining girl boss industrial complex or fucking gatekeep, whatever, the word became representative of something bigger. And sure, like I totally live in a world where my experience is a privileged one, and as a proxy for a larger cultural conversation, like I fit into that. And so I hold those things in different places. But yeah, absolutely. Like that there's been, the whole girl boss conversation has happened in the wake of something I did so long ago. And hopefully that's something that can inspire people to go do big things and fuck it up, and have permission to do it and give themselves the grace, and hopefully give other people who are in a more public sphere the grace to do that as well.
Yeah, because that gives you grace for yourself to do it, right? If you give other people grace, you leave space for yourself to fuck it up, to evolve, to have different eras of yourself, and to kind of morph into the next thing, which is what this whole conversation is about.
It's worth it. Do it scared and like see what happens, and just keep doing it scared.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sophia. This has been such a fun conversation, and I think people are going to love hearing it. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.